Hi everyone, Jester Bell aka Female Frodo Baggins is here, and as promised from my last video, this is my Wicked for Good review. Now this was one of the few movies coming out this year that I thought guaranteed hit at the box office, and I still think that it'll make a lot of money, and that I was actually looking forward to myself. But there were a lot of negative reviews coming out of the premiere. Now it's not being panned, I would say, but it did get more negative reviews than I think you would want for a movie like this, you know, thinking about the expectations behind it and just what a bad year it's been at the box office and just needing something to be good. But anyway, I went into Wicked for Good with my expectations very, very low. And I gotta say, a lot of the criticisms with this movie are very, very true, and unfortunately, I do believe that this film winds up objectively falling apart in the end. However, I don't think that it's going to turn off too much of the fan base. So what I'll put it to you this way is there were two people watching this movie. One was the Jester Bell, aka Teresa, who is just a moviegoer and who just maybe wanted to enjoy something that doesn't make me feel like complete trash afterwards. And the other side is Critic Teresa, the one that is thinking about how she's going to make a video on it tomorrow. Now, the moviegoer Teresa actually had a decent time at this movie, and it was really, really a relief after I've just watched so many movies this year that on both levels just make me feel like I can't wait for this to be over. And that's kind of been most movies this year. Like, I love going to the theater, but I'll just have the sensation of, oh, I'm enjoying myself for the first 5 minutes, and then I just can't wait for it to be done. I hoped that this one wouldn't be that case, and it wasn't. But then there was the critic side of Teresa, the critic side that kept, you know, mentally picking apart flaws and things that didn't make sense and ways that the narrative just completely fell apart. And I think that that isn't just to do with Wicked for Good. I think that it has to do with the source material behind it, because as much as hype as this movie was getting, I had already heard it, and I've never been able to see Wicked as a play. I've only seen like clips online from the Idina Menzel version. So I only have familiarity with it based on that and listening to the soundtrack, but I'd heard that the second act or the second half of Wicked is considered to be subpar compared to the first act. And so I think that that really, really feeds into this and the experience of watching it. So going back to just my subjective experience with this movie, did I enjoy myself watching it? Yes. And was I glad that I saw it? Yes. And the reason though, but when I think back to it, it's like hard to really pick apart like objective reasons from the writing and the filmmaking of why I enjoyed myself. Once again, that goes back to like the critical standpoint that when you really think about this film, just everything falls apart. From a subjective standpoint, what did I enjoy about this film? Well, I felt like the first film that I enjoyed, I felt like it was 2/3 of a story. That's what I felt like. I felt like it was 2/3 of a story and I didn't get the end. Wicked for Good is feeling like you're getting the final third of a story. So after a year, you were invested in a certain story and you wanted to see it finish out. Now you finally get to see the ending of the story. And I was enjoying myself on that level. I was enjoying myself hearing familiar songs that were good from the Broadway play. And there were some good sequences and good scenes in this movie that I enjoyed. Like, I enjoyed the development on Elphaba and Fiyera's relationship. I'm told that they added a bit more from the source material, and I think that it worked. I think that Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, despite all of their shenanigans in real life, I think Ariana Grande is very well cast in this role. I was hearing some people say that they thought that she was very wooden this time around. I didn't get that. I think that the writing is just a lot weaker. But yeah, I think that it's overall a cast that professionally they give good performances. And, you know, there's some funny moments in the movie as well that I enjoyed. And I liked seeing it tie up where I knew it was going to go with like the references to the Wizard of Oz characters and how they came to be. Now that's what I enjoyed about it. I just enjoyed that this was a movie that I liked last year and I got to finally see the end of it. And there were good scenes, there were good payoffs to that. But then, once again, when you really, really think about it, it just completely falls apart. So, yeah, I think that this movie is, like, this is the good part of it. I think that this movie is very reverential to the original play. The thing that got me the most was the shot that the movie ends on. And if you watch the movie, you'll know what it is. I won't spoil it here, but the shot that the movie ends on and that final high note at the end, I thought was very good. It was probably my favorite part. I couldn't help but smile at the reverence for the original play and the fans of that play. That's all very well and good. Now, getting into the criticisms of this movie, though, once again, objectively, it really falls apart. Now, once again, what I said is it's like the third act of a movie, and that's what this entire movie is. It's like the falling action and the resolution. Like we stopped the story at the last movie at the rising action, and now this is the falling action and resolution. So it's like one very, very long third act. It does not have a three-act structure in the way that the first movie was able to come up with. This is just one very, very long third act. And so it's a very unconventional structure for a movie to have. It's almost like there isn't a beginning and a middle and an end. It's just this one continuous appendage to the first movie, where I think that it would have been a lot better if they just made it one long movie. I think even cutting parts out of the ending or the second act of the play and just making it like a 2.5-hour movie. Like the original was taking a 1.5-hour long part of a play and stretching it out to 2.5 hours. You could have just had a 2.5-hour adaptation of Wicked, but I think that greed really feeds into a lot of this stuff. Same with the Hobbit movies, same with Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, where they stretch out a story where there's not that much source material, and you can really see the effects of that. Like, that was the problem with the first movie, is that there were a lot of pauses, and there were a lot of scenes that dragged on for too long, and dialogue that would be repeated, and songs that would be extended, and it was just basically just bloating it. And what happens there is you lose the emotional beats, and you lose how that's going to hit the audience when you intentionally stretch everything out, and all of a sudden it's no longer about making sure that you hit the right marks emotionally and in terms of character and story development. It's just about lengthening it so that it hits a certain time stamp or whatever. But anyway, going to Wicked for Good, it has that much more than the first movie, where it's just like we don't have that much to develop with the characters anymore. We don't have that much more to explore, but we're going to just stretch it out as long as possible. For example, there's a scene that's added that I know wasn't in the original play, where they're seeing Glinda as a little girl, and how she always wanted to please people even though she didn't have the power. And it's like, I already know that about this character. I don't need a big flashback sequence to explain that to me. It doesn't add anything, really. It's just there for padding. And that's what there is in a lot of this movie. It feels like a much shorter section stretched out for a very long time. And once again, we don't have that much to develop with the characters anymore. I do like what we get. Like I said, I like the development of Elphaba and Fiyero, but it's just like there's not a lot. We didn't need a 2-hour movie, if you know what I'm saying, to get them to that point. There's kind of a song sequence that they added that I don't think was in the original that kind of just expresses where they're at in their relationship. And I thought that Jonathan Bailey, who I think is a very good actor, I think he plays that character very well, and you can see the change and the progression of that character very well. But once again, there's just not a lot here, and it just felt like I'm seeing just what is leftovers of a story just padded out for a very long time. And it's fun. It's fun to see, like, the Wicked Witch of the East, and it's fun to see, Dorothy's house come into play and the Cowardly Lion and all that stuff. It's kind of just sprinkled in throughout the story. And so, I do want to talk about where I really think that this movie falls apart, though. Once again, I think that the main thing that a lot of people are going to notice is how padded out it is, considering there's not a lot of development, how this is not a conventional 3-act structure movie. It's just like the end of the first movie. That's a really, really long end to the first movie. But there's just developments and character decisions that I didn't think worked. And I think that some of this goes back to the original play. Okay, so Glinda's development in this movie. They give her a song that is supposed to express, like, her catharsis, where she's going to change, or the big climax of her story. The song is not very good. It's not very memorable. I mean, it tells you that she's undergoing a change here, but I think that there would have been a better way to show it. I mean, I think that showing how she reacted when Fiyero got taken away, I think that was a bit more of indicative of a change than this song sequence, which, once again, I think it's just there for padding. But then, okay, spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen the play. But just the ending here, like this progression of events didn't really make sense. So Elphaba is, kind of just decide to embrace the title of Wicked Witch of the West as she does in the play. And in the play, she's supposed to just embrace it and, shut Dorothy in the dungeon and beg and demand her to give the shoes back and all of that. I didn't feel, and this is where I think Cynthia Erivo was not as strong of casting as she should have been. When Idina Menzel, and I've seen the clips of this, when Idina Menzel portrays this in No Good Deed and the ending, I really bought into her actually becoming the Wicked Witch of the West briefly. She actually had the voice, she actually had the tenacity, she actually had the fierceness. Cynthia Erivo, I would say that she has like the repressed part of Elphaba. She's a very repressed version. She has the kind-heartedness and kind of the mopiness and the melancholy aspect, but she does not have the ferocity. So when she's kind of been a melancholy Elphaba for 2 movies now, and then she finally breaks down for No Good Deed, it's in a very melancholy way. And when she's trying to sound fierce, towards Dorothy. And this is all brief, to be fair, but I didn't buy it. I didn't buy that development because this Elphaba, I don't think has that fierceness or tenacity that made me buy her going in that direction, even though there had been enough, bad things levied against her in the story to justify that. I just think that the performance didn't bring it together on that front. But here's what's worse about it. And once again, this is spoiler territory. This is around the end. But we have Glinda go to Elphaba and try to convince her, off the ledge and that she's in danger and trying to get her to stop attacking Dorothy. And then Elphaba won't hear her, but then she gets a note. I presume the note was from Fiyero telling her what to do or indicating that he was alive or something like that. And she immediately changes and makes a plan. So it's like, I'm going to let myself die and just take the blame for everything, and then you're going to have to take over. So I didn't think that the development landed there. It was like very rushed. Like 1 second Elphaba is just despairing over everything, and then the next second, and embracing the title of Wicked Witch of the West, and there's a big song sequence to indicate that, and then instantly she gets a note and everything has changed, and she's completely changed and has just resigned and made a completely different plan. Now, I'm not saying that this couldn't work, but it just all happened so fast. Like for a movie that's very padded out, this change in her. 1 minute she's doing a change one way, the second minute it's like 180 degrees the other way all of a sudden. And I didn't think that it really spoke to Glinda and Elphaba's friendship there. I wish that they had made it, with as much padding as this movie had, they should have made Glinda talk her off the ledge and legitimately get her to come back, and then she gets the note, and that's the final thing that kicks her back and makes her make that decision. Because it didn't feel like Glinda actually did anything for Elphaba at the end, because it ultimately was not her that convinced her to make any kind of change. And so that's kind of, goes against the entire point of Wicked for Good and I've Been Changed for Good, that entire theme in the song. And that's why I don't think that the song hit as much as it could have. And then, you see her give up and let herself be melted, supposedly. And there's a lot of emotional sequences at the end that I think when it's from the original play, that really works. And once again, the ending song note and the ending shot were my favorite part. But there's just more to it here that doesn't make sense. Because after Elphaba decides that she's going to take the blame for everything and give herself up and make it seem like she died, like Glinda just goes and tells the wizard to go away. And he does. And then she goes to Madame Morrible, who's really been, kind of the person behind all of this. She's the person with actual power. And she locks her in the dungeon, just like that. And this is a problem that goes back to the original play, I would say, after watching clips, is that after all of this turmoil and suffering that's going on in Oz, apparently all Glinda had to do is just turn around and just do away with the Wizard of Oz and Madame Morrible just like that. And she could just, as long as she made the decision, like, they were gone. And there was, she just needed to decide to do that, but she wouldn't for this entire time. And so it's frustrating because it's like, okay, so this entire time, Glinda, who's been made up to be like the good witch to everyone and has everyone on her side, all she had to do is just turn against the Wizard of Oz and Madame Morrible herself. And there was no fighting going on. There was no pushback or any struggle for her. She just needed to decide to do it. She just needed to say, up to the dungeon with you. You go back to your land. And that's it. And that was my problem watching like clips of the original play. I'm like, you have this big story and this big conflict, And it's over just like that. And it's like all you needed to do is have one of the main characters just decide, oh, I'm not going to go along with you anymore. I'm going to turn against you. And I just don't understand that. That kind of makes it fall apart because, like, Glinda seemed like she wanted adoration and power this entire time. But she kind of would have that if she would turn against the, like, she has that if she turns against the wizard and Madame Morrible. Everyone's still on her side, so why didn't she do that sooner? Like, it doesn't seem like these are two great villains if they can just be shut away like that just by Glinda deciding all of a sudden. It doesn't seem like they're people where they would have actually been challenging to Elphaba. Like, Madame Morrible conjured an entire storm to bring a house from another land to kill someone in this movie, and it's like, but she can just be told that she's going to go in the dungeon by the end, and she doesn't use any magic against that, and it's just over. I hope I'm making sense here. Like, that's what didn't make sense about it. It's like you've got this super powerful wizard character in Madame Morrible, and she has all this power, and they've been controlling people all this time, but all it took is one decision from Glinda to just say, okay, you're going to the dungeon now, and it's done, and, like, what happened to all of the powers that this witch had this entire time? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so that's where the movie falls apart, is because there's not a lot of development for the characters to go through anymore. This could have definitely been condensed, and the first movie could have been condensed to have a 2.5 hour version of the entire play. You could have 100% done that, maybe a 3 hour version. I think people would accept that. I think that people would be able to get through that these days. But you don't have a lot of development for the characters, so there's a lot of padding throughout the movie, and there's not a lot for them to learn. And I just thought that there were moments of development that didn't exactly make sense. Like, I guess I can see how Glinda changed because of Elphaba just by watching her, but I don't know how Glinda changed Elphaba, which is the entire theme of this movie. I don't really see how that happened. And that's why I think that it would have been a lot more powerful if Glinda was legitimately the one who talked Elphaba off the ledge and off becoming the actual Wicked Witch of the West by the end. That would have worked a lot more. And I can just see that if you wanted to lengthen this movie, then you should have had more scenes of that development, of their relationship, and they tried to do that with the wonderful sequence. But I wish that the length of this movie was used to make those elements stronger, or maybe, make a new sequence where Glinda takes over and there's a difficulty. Maybe she can get rid of the wizard just like that, but she has to get rid of Madame Morrible, and that's much harder because she actually has magic. And maybe that's a big point for Glinda to actually use that magic. I mean, it's nice to see the book finally open up for her at the end and, like, she's finally unlocked something. But it just is like, if you wanted to lengthen this movie, then you should have actually used it to maybe patch up the parts of the play that didn't work, rather than just lengthen the entire thing. I don't feel like there was actually thought into actually how do we fix up what people aren't really into about the second half of the play that is considered the weaker half. It's just, how do we lengthen this to be a full-length movie when we're splitting this into two parts? So Wicked for Good, was I happy that I saw it? Absolutely. Do I think that it's a disappointing second half compared to the first one? Also, absolutely. And I think as people analyze this further, it's just going to be like that. Yeah, this really does fall apart, and it's not even like a movie per se. It's just a really, really long last act that should have been shortened at a part of the last movie, and the last movie should have been shortened. But I don't think that Wicked fans are necessarily going to be disappointed, because I think that a lot of these flaws of just having weaker character development, I think that they were already there in the first place. So I think that people will at least be satisfied with that. As a last thing, the song sequences. Like, I think Wonderful was a very good song sequence, but for the other song sequences, I felt like they weren't really creative with them. I felt like it was just characters walking around singing and walking around buildings and singing, and there wasn't any creativity to them. And it's like, that's probably how it looks like in a play, but you have to be more creative in a movie form where it's just completely different. And I felt like they were creative with their song sequences in the first movie with the choreography and how it was shot and all of that. But this one, it seemed like they were content to just film the actors and actresses just singing and walking around. And it's good voices and all of that, but like every single song sequence is just one character or two characters singing and walking around whatever building or area that they're in. There was no creativity towards it whatsoever. And so that's why I also think that that might be disappointing for people, and why it might not be as big as the first one, because there's far less high points. There isn't a Defying Gravity, there isn't a Dancing for Life, there isn't a What Is This Feeling. The song sequences just are not creative whatsoever, and so it's kind of odd on that front. Like, I can see, like, they could have looked at the second half of the play and where it didn't work and try to fix that, but so much of this feels like it's just for padding, and so much of this feels like, I don't know if they got exhausted for the second part, and the choreography for the song numbers weren't as there, or maybe it goes back to the original play where the songs just weren't as good, and so there wasn't that inspiration there, but I still feel like they could have made it work. But as it stands, it's just like the second half of the first movie that you really enjoyed. It's not anything spectacular on its own. It's just, if you enjoyed the first one, well, here is the wrap up to that film. And if you really want to see the wrap up like me, then you'll at least enjoy yourself. Like, I didn't regret watching this, but it definitely, by the end especially, I was like, this is not coming together. This is really falling apart. So that's what it is. Like, I don't think that it's going to necessarily turn off the main audience for it. We'll see how this works at the box office. I'm still hoping it does really well, because I don't think that anyone is going to be upset by this if they know the original play. Like, it doesn't ruin anything from there. I think that the flaws were just already there in part to begin with. But that's all I got for you guys today. I still do think they could have put a lot more effort into this. What did you think of Wicked for Good? Do you have any interest in seeing it? How do you think we're going to make it out of this awful year for movies alive? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.